What is going on, everyone? Chris with Journals, Comics, and Pop Culture, and today we are bringing you the third installment of this video series, the top 50 key comics to invest in for under $50. This is numbers 30 to 21, folks. If you aren't subscribed to the channel, please take some time to do so. We are almost at 10K subscribers. I can't wait till my 10K giveaway contest. All you need to do to be entered is be subscribed to the channel. I will be releasing more details on that real soon. Make sure you also check out all the links below. And I am here producing content almost 7 days a week for all of you. But before we get into this video, it is A1 Wednesday, and as always, I gotta give a big shout out to my local shop, A1 Comics. If you are in the Northern California area, you got to check out one of 3 of their locations in Sacramento, Roseville, and Folsom, but they are also online. I got their links in the description below as well. Follow them on Instagram at A1 Comics. They have live Instagram sales every Wednesday and Friday starting at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Their sales are massive. They go for 3 hours long. They are also on Whatnot and Twitch, so go give them some love if you haven't yet. But let's get into these 10 books today, folks. So I highly recommend you go check out the first 2 video installments where we're counting down 50 down to 31. The way this works is the lower on the list we get, the hotter these books are getting in terms of increase in value over the last few years. We're going to be looking at current fair market value of graded books and raw books, and we're going to be comparing that to the value from 3 years ago. Shall we get in to the book? Starting with number 30, we have Thor Annual number 6. This right here is the second appearance and origin of KORVAC. Big shout out to Bryce Comics, who made me aware of this book a good few months back. I picked up a cheap one, I think for like 12 bucks, maybe about a fine. It's definitely increased some, but look, a very decently affordable book still, where I think KORVAC has some opportunity to show up in the MCU. I mean, look, folks, who are we kidding? 90% of these characters that Marvel's created have a good chance of showing up in the MCU at some point. Still, another aspect about this book that I like is annuals and giant-sized books are getting a lot more love these days. When big blue chip keys continue to go up, when first appearances continue to go up, you find these other types of books, team ups, second appearances, origins, and a lot of these things happen in annual and giant size books, especially around the silver and bronze age. But let's look at these numbers. Current 9.6 EGC fair market value is sitting at $173. And you guys may be like, Chris, I thought these were books under 50. That $50 mark is for raw books, folks. When you start grading books, you can get even affordable books up above the $100 mark once you put them in a slab. So keep in mind that $50 mark is for raw books. But again, for a 9.6 CGC 3 years ago, $89. That is a 3-year increase in value of 94%. Really solid. It's almost doubled in value based on these rough fair market values. Average raw. This is what average raw means. I say it in every video. You take all of the raw sales, take the price points, add them up, divide them by the total amount of books sold. This doesn't pertain to a specific grade, but I always like to say, roughly somewhere in a mid-grade, depending on the age of the book. Be careful with this book. Again, I always say don't overpay for something. But before we get into the other books, I do want to make my statement that I always make. I'm not here to sell you one of these books. I'm not here to tell you to go buy these books or invest in these books. Buy what you love. Be willing to take the risk. And if it's not for you, folks, it's not for you. All right? I'm just here to give you my personal opinion, sprinkled in with some data and some facts. But let's move on to book number 29 on the list, X Factor number 6, the first full appearance of Apocalypse. I've always loved Apocalypse because I was a big X-Men fan as a kid, and because of seeing him in the animated series. Wasn't a fan of what they did with Oscar Isaac's Apocalypse in that film, not Oscar Isaac's fault. But I do believe that this book has been undervalued for a long time. And for those that watch my channel, you know that I do not use the term undervalued lightly. Current 9.4 CGC fair market value, $138. 3 years ago, $69. That's a 100% increase. This book has roughly doubled in value in that 9.4 grade. I also say this, folks, and I'll probably do a video on this in the near future. Percent increases follow with grade. All right. And people ask me this all the time. Should I invest in a 9.8 or should I invest in a high grade? Invest what your budget allows you to invest in, because even though dollar amounts might be smaller, if you're putting less amount in a purchase for a lower grade book, if the book increases to a certain percentage, say 100%, most likely it's increasing roughly around that 100% mark in every grade. These trends happen all the time with key comics. Average raw book is sitting at about $50. This is, about a mid-grade, 1986 mid-grade, mid-80s, 1986 book. So you could probably find higher mid-grades for around that mark. So while I believe this book has been undervalued for a very long time, I do feel it's finally picking up steam. Moving on to book number 28, we got Omega Men number 3, the first appearance of Lobo. I think Lobo doesn't get as much love as he deserves, and of course he's got his cult following. Now if DC can do something with him in a live action franchise that sticks, boy, this could really help this book. But I say this about DC all the time: DC key books do not need movie hype to continue to increase. Marvel doesn't either, but it's there because of how successful the MCU has become. Looking at current CGC, 9.6 fair market value, $150. 3 years ago, 74, 103% increase in sales, increase in value. Again, roughly doubling in value with the average raw sale of $50. So again, this book could still be found pretty affordable out there. This is another, roughly mid-80s, $50. You could probably find a bit of a higher grade, mid-grade. But again, I always say, go to your LCSs, search in the back issue bins, do your due diligence, and look at all the online sources, eBay, Mercari, and be willing to negotiate with sellers, folks. Always negotiate. The worst they could do is tell you no, right? Let's move on to book number 27. My favorite dude, Spidey. I just sold one of these. I think I sold it for a bit under fair market value too. Spectacular Spider-Man number 1. First issues in this series, which is the second ongoing solo title for Spider-Man. You might be able to count the Spidey series that came out, but I don't really count that. This is an official Spider-Man title with Spider-Man in the name. When you think of ASM, Amazing Spider-Man, as the legacy run, those books continue to increase, even standard run fillers, especially for Silver and Bronze Age. So when you get a number 1 issue of that second series, and this was a solid series in terms of read. It was extremely solid from the moment it began to the moment it ended in the mid-90s. Let's look at these numbers. Current 9.6, CGC fair market value, $171. Next to 3 years ago, $84. 104% increase, again, roughly doubling in value. Average raw sale, $49. So still, you can get this book for under that $50 mark. Mid-70s book, probably a solid mid-grade. I sold, I think, mine was a fine minus. I think it was a 5.5. I think I sold it for $26. So, and that was on a Whatnot auction. So it goes to show you, that these prices, you can find deals. You can get into an auction that maybe goes a little above a current fair market value. You might luck out and find one for under fair market value. So there you go, folks. Be patient too. Be patient in your buying. Moving on to number 26, Dracula. Tomb of Dracula. We already had one Tomb of Dracula book. We're having another one. Tomb of Dracula number 18. This is the first Dracula versus Werewolf by Night. Spoiler to the Moon Knight preview. Moon Knight appears to be beating on some hairy furry creature. Could it be Werewolf by Night? I'm hoping so. I mean, we already know that this Halloween special is coming, and it's really looking like Werewolf by Night is going to be in that. This right here is a book I think that has a lot of potential, both for the short term and for long-term investing. I think Bronze Age Marvel horror and DC horror, but more Marvel, obviously, because of what they got going on with the MCU, has a lot of room to grow short term and long term. Current 9.0 CGC fair market value $154 next to 3 years ago at 75, 105% increase with an average draw of $48. There's a trend here with a lot of these books. A lot of these books so far on the list today have been hovering around the same similar values, with that percent increase going up slowly by a percent or two every time, right? All right, folks, we are halfway through today's list. Before we get to the next 5, I do want to remind you all, if you are in need of supplies, check out bcwsupplies.com. You can use the code JOURNOS to receive 10% off of your order, and you could use the code as many times as you want. The code never expires, so make sure you get the code down, JOURNOS. I stand by BCW Supplies. I obviously use other supplies from different companies as well, but when it comes to poly bags, boxes, I use no one else but BCW for sure. And of course, they have a lot of other stuff on their website that you could take advantage of saving 10% for. So hope you guys do that and save yourself some money. But let's get into book number 25 on the list today. And this is Thor 162, Origin of Galactus Continued. Now, the reason why I put this book on the list in terms of Galactus's origin, it's a 4-part origin story, and starting in 161, continuing in 162, and then finally continuing in 168 and 169. All of those other books are going for a higher value than 162. So this one was the one that just fit onto this list as something that you could probably pick up for $50 or under, depending the grade. So let's look at these numbers. Current 8.0 CGC fair market value, $159. $77 3 years ago, with an increase in value of 106%. Where's average raw sitting? $50. So you got a 12-cent Silver Age book. Again, look to find, a mid-grade book for that price, and I'm sure you can still find probably lower mid-grades for under that mark. But look, folks, over the last few years, I was collecting a lot of Galactus, because while Galactus is an amazing character who just has his own legacy already out within the comics, if Galactus gets introduced into the MCU, it's going to be mania. And that's just my humble opinion. I think there's a couple characters for that's going to happen. One is Silver Surfer, the other is Galactus. All of these books, even outside of his big keys, I think are solid investments if done right. Moving on to 24, Disney, folks. We got some Disney's DuckTales. Look, maybe this is a personal preference. DuckTales #1, first appearance of Launchpad McQuack. Okay, hear me out before I talk about the numbers. Hear me out. I love the Disney books from the 80s and early 90s. This speaks to a lot of our childhoods, and I think we're at an age now, we're in an era now to where nostalgia sells. And there's a very good chance that books like this can continue to pick up value for the long term, simply again for 2 reasons. One, because they're aging out. That alone can drive a little bit of value into these books. We see that happening with 90s Marvels and DC books as well. Nothing crazy, but still prices are slightly going up on some decently affordable key books. Also, the nostalgia continues to grow as it ages out, and those two things kind of play together. So let's look at these numbers. Current 9.8 CGC fair market value, $253. I mean, that's a solid premium for a 9.8 book, right? And 3 years ago, it was selling for roughly $120. Now, keep in mind, folks, fair market value is a moving average. It's not an exact science, all right? But looking at that, to a rough 3-year increase of 111%, that's really, really healthy on the market, especially when you look at this average raw still sitting at about $13. And for when this book came out, you could still probably find a decently higher grade, probably in the fine range for around that $13 mark. So again, very, very affordable book. Moving on to number 23, 3 left on the list, and this one is starting off our bottom 3, Daredevil 270. First appearance of Blackheart, son of Mephisto. Now, let's talk about this because the Mephisto hype has been so crazy over the last year to where there's memes. There's memes made now. So when we look at these numbers, I'm going to tell you to proceed with caution, okay? Because let's do this. Current 9.6 CGC fair market value, $208. 3 years ago, $97. It's a 114% increase in value with the average raw sitting at about $27. Now, this is a late 80s book. And here's the thing. While I do believe that Mephisto is going to show up in the MCU, he might show up sooner than later now. Be careful with anything relating to Mephisto right now, simply because of there was a type of hysteria around Mephisto and anything Mephisto. And, you know, I talk about FOMO. FOMO can be healthy, but I really do believe that there's a lot of unhealthy FOMO right now. And I do believe there's a lot of people reacting on the market and buying comic books at prices to where they're not even letting the book naturally have supply and demand meet up to each other to where price goes up in a way that reflects that supply and demand. So just be careful. Don't overpay for this book. But here's the thing. This is a book that probably more likely than not can be found in back issue bins for a decently affordable price. Anything surrounding Mephisto, if he shows up in the MCU, can definitely happen. They can go in so many different directions. So again, this is one that can have a big payoff, but one as well that you need to kind of take heed to. And I've said this, I just did an investing video and tried to school you guys on a little bit of finance and in economics. You always got to remember, sometimes with more risk, there could be more reward. And that's kind of with this right now. You might be able to take a little bit of a risk, especially if you're buying these graded books, but there could be a high reward there if it pans out. All right, moving on to number 22 on the list, my favorite X-Men, X-Woman, PSYLOKKE. New Mutants Annual number 2, the first U.S. appearance of Betsy Braddock, PSYLOKKE. Current 9.0 CGC fair market value, $99. 3 years ago, 46, 150% increase in value over the 3 years, with the average raw going for 48. This is another one when we talk about annuals. I think this book was overlooked a lot simply because we don't have, you know, the PSYLOKKE that we knew her, at least from our generation, was the Jim Lee rendering and the change that he made to her in how she was and how she was depicted. And also because it's an annual book. But annuals, again, have been getting a lot more love. I think this character has been getting a lot more love, and we've seen this book increase and more than double over the last few years because of that. Unfortunately, she didn't get her propers. I think Olivia Munn was solid, but she just got no screen time in that Apocalypse film, and it just really dropped the ball. But a lot here for PSYLOKKE. I think she's an iconic character that's gonna, go far in the long term, regardless of anything in the MCU. But this is what I think it is possible that we could see PSYLOKKE, aka Betsy Braddock of some form, show up in the MCU before we even get an X-Men team. That's my humble opinion, folks. All right, we have one more book on the list today. Coming in at 21, we have Alpha Flight 33, the first appearance of Lady Deathstrike. Folks, I just sold I believe it was a Find Plus of this book for $6. That, I'm not just saying this, I don't just talk. That was a steal. Current 9.6 CGC fair market value, $101. 3 years ago, 47. 150% increase. Average raw sale, $16. Again, mid-80s book. You could probably find a higher mid-grade for that. That's $16, I think, more as a fair market value for about the book that I sold, because I think I had mine stickered at like 14, and it sold for 6. Oh my gosh, that just goes to show you on Whatnot. Sometimes you could come in and get deals and pay under, but sometimes when you're in an auction bidding, it can go over that sticker price as well. But look, another underlooked character, in my humble opinion. I don't want to say the books are essentially undervalued, but I will say that I think this character has been overlooked. And the way that Wolverine played out in the Fox franchises over that 20 years, I want to see more of those personal story arcs of his play out in the MCU when he comes into the MCU, because he has to at some point. I'm still advocating for Daniel Radcliffe. I know a lot of you guys are going to mock me, but I have an argument for it. But look, I think this one really is very low risk, especially if you're buying them for $6. I think there's a lot of upside to this book. Sick cover. And guys, yeah, $6. That was for me. All right, folks, that's my 10 books for today. You all have to keep an eye out for the next two, the final two, where we're going to be counting down 20 to 1. So make sure you're subscribed and you click the notification bell to be first on the scene when I publish those videos. Thank you all for watching, and I absolutely want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know which comics you have on the list today, and let me know if there's any that you would have liked to see on the list. But before we go, as well as always, I got to give a big shout out to my Patreon members who help support the channel month in and month out. If you guys are interested in becoming a Patreon member, it's only $3.99 a month. You get extra perks as well. So big shout out, Sherry, Mac, Kyle, Justin, Kenwick, Jordan, X11, Shelby, Kenneth, Rich, Tony, Marty, Larry, Jeremy, Keith, Michael, Tricky, Alvin, Fletch Comics, Pedro, Peter, Joe, Larissa, Sagi, Dan, and Simon. Thank you guys so much. But I can't forget all my wonderful YouTube channel members. That's only $1.99 a month. You guys can click by clicking that join button below. You do get extra perks as well. I do give random giveaways to members only as well. So thank you all so much for supporting day in and day out. And to all of my viewers and subscribers, thank you all so much for being here. Hope you guys are well, and until next time.